It's just totally an atmosphere of people getting together and just trying to make this awful situation better.
And as someone who used to live in this area, is that what it was like when you lived here? Does that surprise you in any way, or you think this is?
No.
I'm picking up on a very strong community sense
I think
myself.
This is a very, very strong community. You know, people are kind of hugging each other, people know each other. It's an enormously strong community here in North Kensington, as in the entire Notting Hill Gate area. And I think that it's no surprise to me at all that people are absolutely pulling together and trying to help. But people are also coming from other areas as well and just turning up and asking to help. And I think the atmosphere has changed as well. When I first arrived, it felt very kind of quite panicky and people couldn't believe it. And I think now it's kind of calmed down and everyone's just kind of getting on with it.
All right, Sarah Barron, I'll let you go back to your work. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks for joining us. And I can't really overstate how many people I've seen here in this area doing similarly and handing out water and handing out food and really trying to offer help and places to stay for people whose properties are now affected and may not be able to go back into their properties as well until the Grenfell Tower behind me is deemed safe. Let's hear from another eyewitness who spoke to the BBC just a little earlier on.
Only 6 months ago, not even that, there was a tower over there called Tredick Tower. There was a fire on the 23rd floor and it was contained to one flat and they controlled it, you know, and there was no major casualties. So how comes that didn't happen here? How comes it just went right through the building? This is Kensington Borough Council. They need to sort it out. They're trying to save money somehow or doing something, but look what they've done. They've caused absolute tragedy for people. This is a disaster. It was like waking up in a horror film.
How did you get out then, Michael,
Just my wits. I had to get her out. I love them, so what was I going to do? I wasn't going to run on my own, so I made sure she was all right with her breathing, and I got down the stairs. And when we got out and looked up, it was engulfed. That's what I'm saying. If we was in there another 5 minutes, we wouldn't even been able to get out. With the thickness of the smoke that was coming up.
And your thoughts are obviously with those who have lost their lives.
Of course, my heart goes out to everybody. The ones that have passed and the ones that are still here, because it's going to, you know, this is traumatic. This ain't something you're going to get over tomorrow and go and have a couple of pints and laugh about it, you know. So, what can I say? I'm absolutely gutted about it all. My life's turned upside down. We've lost everything. Yeah. Lost everything. Just started afresh. Done the house up, doing it all up, all jewellery, money, belongings, passports, clothes. Got nothing. I've had to have people give me clothes today, you know. Thank God for people's generosity and kindness. I should be walking about in them smelly boxer shorts. Just trying to make right, there you go. Okay.
What are you going to do? I mean, where are you going to sleep tonight? Do you have any idea?
Up that tree.
I mean, it's desperate actually, isn't it?
It's desperate, yeah.
Yeah. But people are, I've spoken to people, they're opening their homes.
Yeah, that's right, there's people that have offered us our houses and that, but what we don't want to do is go with that and the next thing we lose out on our accommodation. So we stayed because we haven't got nowhere to go. So if they think we've got somewhere to go, you just get pushed to one side and then you're left up the canal without a paddle, you know what I mean?
Let's hear from some other people who live locally and witnessed terrible, terrible scenes. Let's hear from Tamara, who spoke to us a little earlier as well.
Around 12:30, nearly 1 o'clock, my mum called me and was like, there's a fire outside. So we went outside. By the time I'd got there, the whole left side, right side of the building was on fire. The whole thing was engulfed in flames and you can hear people screaming, help me, help me, help me. So me and my brother and some other people who lived in the area ran over to the estate where you could actually still get underneath it, and there's people like throwing their kids out, just save my children, just save my children. And like the fire brigade, the ambulance and the police, they couldn't do nothing. They couldn't get in. They're just telling them to just stay there where they are, we'll come and get you. But things quickly escalated beyond measures and they couldn't go back in and get them. It was just too much. Within another 15 minutes, the whole thing was up in flames. And there's still people like at their windows, help me, help me, help me. And you can see the fire going into the house and into the last room that they're in and just engulfing their whole apartment with...
Samira, what did you see?
Yeah, it escalated very quickly. Like, you know, around midnight, it was only around like the 3rd floor, and then before you know it, the whole 23 floors of the building were all on fire. And you know, there was people screaming for help, people obviously throwing kids out. And I think it's just everyone felt really helpless because obviously no one could get to them and everyone was really scared and they didn't know what to do. So it was really sad to see, because these are all people that we like grew up with and people we see every day, like our neighbours, and there were little kids there, elderly people, disabled people. There was a lot of people there, family members. Thankfully, family members did make it out, but there's still a lot of people that were there.
Unaccounted for, and especially like my brother, loads of his school friends. They're still wondering if their friends have made it out. They haven't got in contact with them. They haven't heard anything. And one of the girls, she actually lives on the top floor, which was by the police and the fire. That if you were living on the floor, that more time that you haven't, they haven't made it.
People talk about the speed at which the flames took hold. Is that what struck you?
I think that's what the most shocking thing is to everyone, is how quick it literally went from 0 to 100. Like it was literally just the 4th floor, and that was really like, it was bad, but it was very minor. And that building's really big. Like it literally escalated so quick, and that's what I think shocked people the most, is how quick it happened. Like literally, the whole building was like gone before. It didn't even hit 1 o'clock and the whole building was literally all in flames.
Did you see people getting out? Okay.
Yeah, I saw people flying out of their balconies and out of their windows. Literally, I saw a man who flew out of his window. I saw kids screaming for help, people jumping out. So we saw a lot of people jumping out that basically didn't make it. Obviously, it was like a lot of, it was from like the 8th floor and up. So obviously that kind of fall, you wouldn't really make it.
Yeah,
so
I had a family friend that was stuck all the way up until 5 o'clock this morning in the house with her young child.
Luckily she made it out.
But luckily she made it out, and some others from her floor and the floors below made it out. But there's people that was higher up that they just couldn't get to, and the flames were just got out of control so quickly. Like it was like split decision, like a split second, and then it was like the whole building was on fire. When we started off from 1 floor, and then we took one side, then the whole building, and then there's nothing you can do but watch what's unfolding in front of you.
And were you aware of any concerns before about any safety issues?
No, we actually, I didn't know anything, because obviously the building, they built a new school, they knocked down the leisure centre and built a new one. So at the time, no, I didn't personally know about anything that happened. This was sort of like, literally, it was around just before 12 o'clock. I was actually awake, and then I went to bed, and not even 30 minutes later, I woke up to flames. So it happened really quickly.
One of the many eyewitnesses we've been speaking to here this morning. I can't really overstate what a truly horrific sight this is.
In West London, as we look at the pictures of the tower block, still having water sprayed on it, still we see some flames inside.
In West London, a truly horrific sight, not something that any of us should see in Britain in 2017. The notion that 24-storey tower block has gone up in flames in, from everything we hear, a really relatively short space of time is quite horrific. Add on to that the fact that the fire broke out at 5 to 1 in the morning. So it requires little imagination to think about how many people were inside, asleep, families. These are flats of different sizes, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedrooms, would have been families. We've heard stories of people who mercifully did manage to escape. We've heard stories of remarkable bravery on the part of the emergency services. Some of those who did get out in the night, in the dark, down the stairwells, talked about firefighters running up past them upstairs to try to help people who might be trapped. And here, 11 hours later, there is still fire on the right-hand side of this building. It is a devastating and terribly upsetting sight. Let's just try to bring you all the details as we know so far. There is still so much we don't know, but the Metropolitan Police has said that they know at least 6 people have been killed in this fire. All the latest details come, first of all, this hour from our correspondent, Richard Lister.
The fire raged through the night. This 27-storey block, home to hundreds of people, was engulfed in flame. In the chaos, it was unclear how many were able to get out. Some were trapped inside for some time at least, standing at windows in the desperate hope of rescue. Those trapped on the lower floors could see fire crews trying to get to them, but higher up the building, the inferno was too intense to let rescuers get close. People living nearby, alerted by the smell of smoke, came to the site and filmed what they saw. Many had come to see if they could help, but with flaming debris falling from the tower block, their lives were at risk too.
They need to ring 999. There is a dedicated line for this incident, okay?
On the ground, police cleared a wide cordon and closed the nearby A40 in and out of London. Some 200 firefighters were brought in to tackle the blaze. As it became more intense, there was concern that the building might collapse with people still trapped inside. Many people were led to safety, but more than 50 were taken to hospital. Others were counting their blessings too. David Benjamin was in the block when the fire began.
Yeah, there was smoke everywhere, literally everywhere. There was people downstairs, there was bits of the block, the cladding falling off the block, that was on fire. People screaming after a couple of minutes, because obviously people were still sleeping on the higher floors, so they didn't have a clue what was going on. I'm not even sure if half of them got out, to be honest with you.
Me and my brother and some other people who lived in the area ran over to the estate where you could actually still get underneath it, and there's people like throwing their kids out, just save my children, just save my children. And like the fire brigade, the ambulance and the police, they couldn't do nothing. They couldn't get in. They're just telling them to just stay there where they are, we'll come and get you. But things quickly escalated.
Everyone's just in shock, you know, there's tears, it's just, you know, there's people searching for people now with pictures out. Apparently there's a lot of kids from the school that are joining the building and are missing, you know, because there was a lot of young kids and a lot of old people living in the block. And it went right up, there weren't no stopping it.
Daylight revealed the fire still well alight. Fire crews with breathing apparatus were still battling to rescue as many as they could.
I am very sad to confirm that there have been a number of fatalities. I cannot confirm the number at this time due to the size and complexity of this building, and it would clearly be wrong for me to speculate further. Equally, the cause of this fire is not known at this stage.
The block is now a smoking ruin. It should have been one of the safest in the borough, with a multi-million-pound refurbishment completed only last year. Its residents are now wondering where they'll live.
We have 125 homeless families, which has got to be one of the priorities of the borough, of the council today. We need to house these people. There's 500 people here milling around, not knowing where their loved ones are and not knowing where they're going to sleep tonight.
This is a community in shock. The immediate aftermath is horrific enough, but there'll be a long-term impact too. This nurse helped survivors overnight.
I've seen some things, but today I can't even describe it. There's mothers that have come out and lost their children. There are firefighters that have come out injured. People have lost their homes. Children have seen things. People were jumping out the window. We just need to rebuild as a community now.
Firefighters are still trying to reach the upper floors. They say the number of dead is likely to rise. It may be some time before the full extent of the casualties is clear, and there's another urgent question too. How did this fire spread so quickly? Richard Lister, BBC News.
Well, if you don't know London, let's just try to briefly give you some context as to where this is in West London, Grenfell Tower. Northwest London, if you know the capital reasonably well, it's in zone 2, if that means anything to you in terms of the underground system. It's very close to a tube station, to Latimer Road tube station. It's also close to the A40, a major road, an arterial route really through central London. There's a large police cordon here, of course, absolutely, inevitably, and that therefore also means that there is considerable disruption to transport in the area in terms of the roads. It wasn't too bad on the tube stations, but there was a lot of disruption on the roads, and Westfield Shopping Centre is nearby as well, the large shopping centre that you may be familiar with. That's not far from here either. The tower itself is 24 stories high. It was built in 1974. And you will have, if you've picked up, I'm sure, if you've been following this story this morning, you will have picked up on the fact that an awful lot of people in this area are talking about the refurbishment. There was a refurbishment that took nearly 2 years. It was completed last year. And one element of that refurbishment was some cladding which was put on the outside of the building, and there's a lot of talk and some anger locally, I have to say, about all of that here this morning. Crucially, of course, we still don't know what has caused this fire, but a lot of anger and a lot of talk about that refurbishment, and we will pick up on some of that in the next little while as well. Let's hear first of all from my colleague, from our correspondent Wira Davis. He is on the other side of the tower from where I'm talking to you from. Wira, bring us right up to date with what you've been witnessing from your vantage point today.
Well, police and the other emergency services, Jane, are keeping vehicles and people well away from the site itself. We're just on the edge of the cordon. Of course, that's for obvious reasons. There's a great deal of concern about the integrity of the building itself. The fire commissioner told me earlier on they didn't think the building was in danger of falling down, but that was a couple of hours ago. And then there was a lot of concern about the fire retaking right in the middle, right in the centre of the tower block itself. And for a while, it was inaccessible. But what the fire services have been able to do in the last hour is bring in an absolutely huge unmanned crane. And that is pumping hundreds of gallons of water right into the middle of the building itself. Because it's unmanned, it's not putting any firefighters at risk themselves. It's able to get right up adjacent, close to the building. And it's hammering the side of the building there with gallons and gallons of water. The water is now pouring out of the tower block as it's being pumped in. And that is hopefully against the of a very big fire, and that was, I know, giving concern to the authorities, because previously it was very difficult to get at that huge seat of fire right in the middle of the building. I spoke to one eyewitness who told me that she saw the fire obviously starting last night at about 2 or 3 o'clock, and according to her it started right towards the bottom, in the bottom half of the building, and spread very quickly upwards. And that, of course, does raise concerns that people in those upper floors may not have been able to get out. We know from the Metropolitan Police that there have been 6 fatalities so far, but they themselves say that they expect that number to rise. And, of course, as soon as those fires are put out and the rescuers and the emergency services are able to get into the building, then sadly they do expect to find more fatalities. It's been a horrendous night here. The fire commissioner told me about the fire crews putting themselves under extraordinary difficult conditions. As people were escaping, they were going into the building trying to rescue people. We've heard of those amazing stories of bravery, and even now this morning there have been relief fire crews coming in from as far afield as Kent to relieve those teams that were working overnight here.
Wira, thank you very much. Wira Davis on the other side of the tower, and the smell of smoke is very strong, and we periodically we get scattered with pieces of ash, lots of debris, tiny pieces of ash falling off the building. The pavements here are covered. Everything, all the equipment we're using is covered in a slight film of that. And then depending on which direction the wind is in as well, sometimes the smell is very, very strong indeed. A really bleak reminder many, many streets away of what has happened here.
Just because they're being
let's go to one of the hospitals that's dealing with people affected by this terrible fire. Our correspondent Helen Lee is there. Bring us right up to date, Helena.
Well, Jane, we've just had the latest statement from the London Ambulance Service, and as expected, the number of those injured has increased since about an hour or so ago. Obviously, it's a very complex, fluid situation where you are. So the latest numbers we know from the London Ambulance Service, 74 people are now being treated in hospital. Of those, 20 patients, we're told, are in a critical condition, and also 10 of those patients made their own way to hospital. So 74 patients in hospital at the moment, 20 in a critical condition. Now here at Chelsea and Westminster Hospital, we're about 3 miles or so away from where you are. Patients were brought here overnight. We don't know how many are being treated here at the moment, but it's a busy
London Hospital. They've got an A&E department here, but crucially, they have a specialist burns unit here. They've got multidisciplinary teams, which include specialist burns consultants here, nurses, and also psychologists as well, because as well as the medical treatment that these patients will be receiving, clearly, as we've heard from eyewitnesses, they will have gone through a hugely traumatic experience last night. So there will also be psychologists on hand to help them when the time is right to deal with that. So that is the latest from the hospital here. We're expecting a statement here sometime in the next hour or so. But those numbers, 74 patients in hospital and 20, Jane, in a critical condition.
Helena, thank you. Helena Lee with that update. And to remind you, the Metropolitan Police saying that 6 people have been killed in this fire. So 74 people in hospital, 20 of them in a critical condition. Let's talk to Stephen Wren, who has joined me, who lives here and who runs the Westway Sports Centre.
Yeah, I mean, correction, I don't live here, I work here.
You work here, sorry.
Absolutely.
And your point is that you've opened up, you've closed down what you would normally do in the sports centre for the day, and you're opening it up to help anyone who needs help.
Absolutely. I mean, we've suspended all sports for today, I mean, clearly, and, you know, there's lots of coming to the community here, and it's no surprise to me within this part of London. It's mobilised very, very quickly, but we've got Latimer Church Community Centre over the road. We've got Westway Sports Centre, which is a large indoor space. It's fully available to anybody to come and take refuge and respite. And we're getting a lot of stuff being brought to the centre as we speak. So, so food, drink, and an opportunity for the community to come together.
And you must have people who have come to you already today in an enormous state of shock and distress, a very difficult time for everyone.
I think everybody's in a state of shock, and I think that it's a situation which is continuing to unfold. So let's get together and get through this as best we can. So.
And there are people, sadly, who are going to be homeless or unable perhaps to get back into their homes if they live inside this cordon. How much do you know about what's going on in the area to think ahead to where people might be able to live temporarily?
Well, we're certainly liaising with the council, but and we've made our space available and for as long as it's needed. I think the council are mobilising quite quickly in terms of arranging overnight accommodation, but as I say, you know, the Westway Sports Centre is available immediately. So.
And that's very close by. It's very close to where
just
we're broadcasting from.
one Crowthorne Road. So.
Stephen Wren, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your time, and I'll let you get back there because I know that's extremely busy time for you. We've also been hearing from David Collins from one of the local residents' associations. Let's hear what he had to say to us just a little earlier.
We repeatedly reported concerns to the tenant management organisation of the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea, including fire safety concerns, which were not investigated during the regeneration works.
What were those concerns?
Concerns over locations of boilers, concerns about escape, concerns about fire escape lighting. I mean, I've just noted. I mean, just and the list goes on. Even floor, you know, just. And lots of I've spoke to Nick Paget-Brown of the council. I spoke to councillors, and they refused to investigate. They wouldn't believe that the residents were concerned. 90% of residents signed an independent petition asking for there to be an investigation into the organisation that runs this building because they were so incompetent. And the council turned it down. 68% of residents felt they'd been threatened, harassed, pressured or bullied by the same organisation or by the contractors doing the work. I personally had the contracts manager of Ryden Contractors who ran the work come around and threaten me on my own door. And so that was the conditions we were dealing with. And they didn't listen to our concerns.
Let me just read you a statement from the company Ryden in relation to the tower block itself, because I mentioned earlier there's a lot of talk here and a lot of anger about the refurbishment of this block. Now, crucially, we simply don't know how or why this fire started, and we don't know why it spread so incredibly quickly. That is all going to be the matter for a major investigation, one assumes. But to that point, we have in the last few minutes had a statement from the company Ryden saying because it carried out that refurbishment. So I think it's worth just telling you what the company is saying, that they are shocked to hear of the devastating fire. Their immediate thoughts are with everyone affected. And then going on to say that they completed a refurbishment of the building in the summer of 2016 for the organisation which runs this residential tower block. It's run by the Kensington and Chelsea Tenant Management Organisation. So it carried out the refurb for that organisation on behalf of the council. And it goes on to say this met all required building control, fire regulation and health and safety standards. We will cooperate with the relevant authorities and emergency services and support their inquiries into the cause of the fire. Given the ongoing nature of this incident, it would be inappropriate to comment further at this stage. But the crucial line there in that statement saying that as far as Ryden is concerned, it did meet all required building control, fire regulation and health and safety standards. Let's talk to a fire and building inspector. Jeff Wilkinson joins me from our studios in London. Jeff Wilkinson, thank you for your time this morning. We don't know what happened here precisely, of course, but your thoughts from the pictures you've been watching on the television this morning and from everything we've been hearing from people we talked to about how rapidly the fire spread.
Well, I mean, obviously, first of all, the thoughts are with all those that are affected directly or indirectly, but I think it's safe to say that the pictures that we've seen clearly show that the building didn't perform in the way in which we'd expect the building to perform. If there is a fire in any of these buildings, you'd expect it to be contained to an individual apartment. You wouldn't expect it to spread in anything like the way, and certainly not in the time that we've actually seen here. So something has gone dramatically wrong here.
Your point being that if a fire breaks out in any given flat inside a block like that, there must be systems in place and materials in place to stop it spreading to other flats.
Absolutely. So you'd expect to say the construction of individual flat to be contained as an individual fire-tight cell. You'd expect that the cladding system itself would be non-combustible and it wouldn't contribute to the spread of fire in the building. I think not only is it the actual spread of the fire itself that we need to look at, but one of my major concerns with what we're seeing here and what we're hearing is the concern that the smoke has actually spread into the escape routes. Now, these buildings are designed with just a single stair, just a single stair core within them. So both the fire service and those people that are trying to escape both have to use that stair, hence the reason why in most cases people are advised to stay in place to enable the fire service to get in, tackle the blaze. It's clear here that the fire spread and prevented the fire service from being able to do that.
And that simply shouldn't happen even when you have that construction with one single staircase. There are measures in place.
Correct. I mean, if you think about it, there are several thousand of these tower blocks. There are several hundred fires a year, and almost invariably they're contained to the individual flat or apartment concerned. At this point in time, again, it's very much speculation, but we need to find out whether or not or whereabouts the location of the seat of the fire was in the first instance, because that can help tell us how the fire itself spread. I have heard rumours that there were other works carried out more recently, such as some gas mains being put in through the building. Now, it's possible that in doing that, people have actually drilled through some of the compartmentation and haven't necessarily sealed around that, because what we're after is ensuring that those fire breaks are actually maintained and any services that pass through them are correctly fire stopped afterwards. So even if it was signed off at the time, it may have been that subsequent work has been carried out and that has undermined it.
Right, that's an interesting point. So that subsequent work would have to be investigated as well. A thought about fire alarms as well. I mean, and it sounds like such a simplistic question, but a building of this size, I'm assuming it is obligatory to have fire alarms, isn't it?
Actually, it's quite the reverse. The way in which these buildings are designed, as I say, isn't for everyone to escape. With a single staircase of that kind, the intention is that the fire is contained within the individual apartment, so you don't have to have everyone escaping all at one point. What will happen is the fire service will arrive, they'll take command of it, and they will make a decision as to which floors should evacuate. If you had an automatic detection system, you'd end up with everyone evacuating in. One of the other things that we've found in the past is that if you have a common fire alarm throughout the building, because of situations where toast, etc., goes off, people will start to try and attempt to decommission the alarm, or they'll ignore the response when you're in that. It's quite different to an office building or a hotel building where the evacuation is managed by fire wardens. You don't have that in a block of flats of this kind.
I see. All right. Well, thank you so much for your insight there, Jeff Wilkinson, who is a building safety expert. Thank you very much. I think we can just get an update from our health correspondent, Jane Draper, who's at one of the hospitals dealing with casualties from this fire. Jane, bring us up to date from where you are.
Yeah, we had a statement here a short while ago from the Trust's medical director, Dr. Julian Redhead, and he confirmed for us that here at St Mary's Hospital, which is very close to the tower block, they are treating 16 patients and 3 of them are critically injured. And at the Trust's other hospital, the other hospital with an A&E, Charing Cross in West London, they're treating 4 patients, but none of them are critically injured. So 20 patients in total being treated at the 2 hospitals from this Trust, out of the 64 injured in total being treated across London. I also understand that everyone who's being treated across London is suffering the effects of smoke inhalation. There are no patients who are being treated for burns injuries, which is a very sad fact in itself. When he gave his statement here, Dr. Julian Bedford was really keen to praise the fantastic response of the NHS staff here at the Trust, some of whom had come in overnight under the Trust's emergency planning. They'd simply turned up even if they weren't necessarily on shift, and he was very keen to underline that point. A lot of work going on behind me here, and they've actually got security guards at the doors, and they are really sort of trying to redirect patients who don't need to be here to other NHS services today, because it's incredibly busy for them dealing with what has been a major tragedy.
Jane, thank you, Jane Draper, with the update there from the hospital. While we've been talking to Jane, a statement has come through from 10 Downing Street. And let's just bring you the statement from the Prime Minister about this fire overnight. The Prime Minister is deeply saddened by the tragic loss of life in the Grenfell Tower and is being kept constantly updated on the situation. She's asked for a cross-government meeting at the Civil Contingencies Secretariat at 4 o'clock this afternoon to coordinate the response and to ensure that the government is ready to assist the emergency services and local authorities as necessary. The Prime Minister's thoughts are with all those affected by this terrible incident and the emergency services who are working tirelessly in very difficult circumstances. So that message of regret from the Prime Minister, and saying that there will be a meeting this afternoon of the Civil Contingencies Secretariat. We're going to talk to one of the local councillors in this area in just a moment. First, let's talk to the Labour MP, Jim Fitzpatrick. Good afternoon to you. You're a Labour MP. Your thoughts, first of all, on this appalling fire that we've seen here overnight.
Well, I'm as shocked and horrified as anybody looking at the pictures coming from West London overnight and this morning. This is a tragedy which ought not to be happening in 21st century London. We had a similar blaze in Lakenhall House in Southwark in 2009. 6 people died and over 20 were seriously injured then. The coroner's inquiry made a whole number of recommendations to prevent a similar occurrence, and tragically, sadly, today we have a similar occurrence. We have the science, the technology, the building skills to make sure these types of fires don't happen. They shouldn't be happening in 21st century London, and my heart bleeds for those people who are victims, their families, and I've got nothing but praise for the firefighters and the emergency service workers who are doing everything they can to help.
I mean, yes, you raised so many questions, and that is what everybody here is asking. That's what's so hard today, isn't it? How does this happen in 2017? How is it that I can be standing in front of a tower block that took light so quickly and spread through every one of those 24 stories? I suppose what is so hard for the local community at the moment is it must be surely a very long time until we get those answers.
Not to be too long, fire investigation teams, the building research establishment, they should be moving in relatively quickly to identify where the fire started, how it started, why it spread so quickly, and why the building failed as catastrophically as it clearly has failed. Those factors which contributed to this blaze, I'm sure are various. There's a whole number being suggested by residents and by the media this morning. There'll be a number of factors which would have contributed. We need to identify what played what part and try and make sure that this doesn't happen again. It shouldn't have happened again now.
And I should explain to viewers that you yourself were a firefighter, and you must therefore have also thought not just about those who were living in the block, who've experienced such a terrible, terrible experience, but also the remarkable work carried out by the emergency services.
Firefighters would have turned up to this building at 1 o'clock this morning and seen exactly what's confronting them. They immediately went to work, having arrived after only 6 minutes. They would have gone in to do what they could to tackle the blaze. They would have gone in to alert residents to leave the building. They would have gone in to effect any rescues that they could carry out. They would have entered that building as quickly, as efficiently and as professionally as they could and demonstrate their determination and their courage. They're still there now. They're still searching the rest of the building. That have still got to dampen down the building to make sure that the fire doesn't start again. This will go on for hours and probably days, but the investigation is now what will be demanded by residents, by victims, by bereaved families and by the professionals to say, how could this possibly have happened in 21st century London given the events of 2009 in Southwark, and why did it happen again, and how can we stop it recurring?
Jim Fitzpatrick, the Labour MP, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. An MP for many years, but before that a firefighter for many, many years as well. Let's talk now to my guest here, Nick Paget-Brown, who is from the local council. Thank you for your thoughts, but you won't have been able to hear Jim Fitzpatrick just there, but there was a degree of anger in his voice saying, how on earth does this happen in this day and age?
Well, Jane, before I respond to that, let me just say that I share the enormous sympathy that everybody in this community has for people who've lost relatives, can't find other members of their family at the moment, and will have been injured or at the very least rendered homeless by this awful, awful tragedy. Yes, we need to have a thorough investigation as to, first of all, why this fire started, and secondly, why it appeared to spread so quickly. I can't give you any answers to that. I'm the leader of the council, but we will want answers as to what it was that made the fire spread so rapidly after it started in the early hours of this morning.
And we need that investigation, and we don't yet know yet, of course. But you will be aware, I'm sure, a lot of local people have been talking to us here this morning about it. There was a lot of concern when the refurbishment was going on with this block. People expressed concern. There was a lot of talk in closed internet groups, people saying, I'm concerned about fire safety in this building, 24 stories high. Was that dealt with at the time? Was that responded to? What are your thoughts about that now?
Well, I think there are always concerns about fire safety in high-rise buildings. And anybody who's got people living in high-rise buildings needs to ensure that the very highest standards of fire safety, fire security, fire retardant materials are used. And when this building was recently refurbished, we need to be absolutely sure that all of that was done and that the materials were appropriate and that the refurbishment was done correctly. And that will need to be the subject of a separate investigation. But I think today I just want to, first of all, thank the local community for all the support they've given to residents, to underline that we're working very closely with the emergency services, that we want to ensure that people are rehoused as quickly as possible. Our thoughts are with the injured and those who've died and their families. And then we need a thorough inquiry into why this fire started, why it spread so quickly, and and whether anything wasn't in place which should have been to slow down its progress.
I mean, a refurbishment presumably is not signed off unless the people who've done the work can prove to you and can prove to the authorities that absolutely the right materials were used and that the materials were fire retardant and that all the fire regulations and so on were in place.
Well, that is right, but there are a huge number of high-rise buildings in the UK which are refurbished, and where new cladding is installed and where new materials are used and where we're trying to improve the quality of the home for the people that live in those buildings. They're very often dating back more than 50 years and they do need to be refreshed and refurbished. We will need to establish during an inquiry whether those materials met all the building regulations that apply to high-rise buildings across the country.
And in terms of those affected, lots and lots of people clearly have lost their home. They've lost everything by what we're looking at today. There are others who we wonder whether they will be able to even get back into their homes tonight. It's quite a sizable police cordon. What steps are being taken to rehouse people?
Well, Jane, it is a complete tragedy, and people have lost their homes, and some people will not be returning to the home that they loved. The council's responsibility is to provide short-term accommodation for people tonight and over the next few days, and then to establish alternative accommodation for the families who've been displaced. So that is what we are doing at the moment. There's a team working on it as I speak, and that is our immediate priority. So we've got to ensure that people who have been displaced are looked after, and then we need to find out what caused this fire and why it spread so quickly.
And yes, and you will want that report with you as soon as possible, I'm assuming.
We want it as soon as possible, but I think we need to do it very thoroughly, and we need to look at the different regulatory authorities and what their role in this is. We need to look at the specification of the materials, whether that's appropriate, those materials are appropriate, whether they've been used anywhere else. So there are a lot of questions which need answering. I will be looking to get those questions answered, but the immediate priority is the families who've lost their homes.
All right, Nick Paget-Brown, thank you very much for now. Thank you, the leader of the council here, Nick Paget-Brown. Let's hear from someone else who had a terrible experience overnight. So many people telling us their stories. It's been a very, very traumatic night for so many people here in West London. Let's hear from David Benjamin.
Basically, it was at my girlfriend's house. We were asleep. Heard banging on the door. We went outside to see what was going on. And one of the neighbours said, "Fire, fire." I looked through the keyhole first before we opened. I saw a couple of people running down the stairs where the fire exit is. So we got our trainers on and stuff, and literally within a couple, before we got outside, opened the front door, there was thick smoke along the whole landing, so I shut the door, thought maybe it might be safer to stay inside, but...
Then our phones.
Yeah, then we phoned our neighbour, she said get out, get out. The smoke alarm started going off inside our house, so we thought no, now's the time to get out. So we rushed out, rushed down the stairs.
We're going to go to a police news conference, I believe, in another part of London. Let's listen in.
Since then, this continues to be an emergency response, primarily led by the London Fire Brigade here, but clearly involving all the emergency services, the local authority and a number of other organisations. Tragically, I can confirm that at least 6 people have died. From the London Ambulance Service, there are currently 74 people that have been treated at hospital, of which 20 are receiving critical care. In relation to the number of fatalities, this will be a very complex and potentially lengthy recovery operation within the building, and I anticipate that the number of fatalities will sadly rise. Now, as all of you would imagine, my thoughts, the thoughts of the Metropolitan Police and all the emergency services, and indeed all the communities in London, with all of those who have been tragically affected by this shocking fire. As I explained earlier, I would ask that if anyone has any concerns about any individual, to phone our Casualty Bureau. And the number for the Casualty Bureau is 0800 0961 233. If you don't get through immediately, I would ask you to try again. Equally, if you have reported somebody is missing and they are now safe and well, please contact the Casualty Bureau, a police officer, or let me know at one of the reception centres that I will talk about in a moment. And if you are an evacuated resident, there are 3 reception centres that have been set up by the local authority. One of those is at Portobello Rugby Club in Walmer Road,
one at St Clement's Church in Threadgold Street, and another at Westway Sports Centre on Crowthorne Road. If you are unable to get to one of those reception centres, please make yourself known to a police officer, of which there are a considerable number around the local area. What is really important is that if someone has been reported missing, we now know that they are safe and well. My thanks to all of the public that have been involved or connected to this tragic incident. Again, I would ask people to keep away from the local vicinity. There's a lot of work that's going on across by all of the emergency services. I know it is disruptive, and I really do thank people for their patience. There is travel advice on the TfL website. If you're a local resident, there's lots of advice on the local authority website as well. And lastly, I would like to thank all my colleagues from the emergency service. I spoke to a number of those who were first responders during the night, particularly colleagues from the London Fire Brigade. The incident that's occurred overnight is truly shocking. It's going to take a period of time before we truly understand what has occurred, what has occurred, and the investigation will be complex and, as you would expect, very, very thorough. Now, I'm happy to take a few questions.
Commander Tom Burridge, BBC News. Can you tell us roughly how many people are unaccounted for or missing? And what can you tell us about the investigation at the moment and any inquiries, any lines of the investigation, any focus of the investigation in particular?
So as I explained, we're still in that emergency response mode. So London Fire Brigade are within the building at this point in time. I can confirm that we've had 6 fatalities. I anticipate that number will rise, as I explained. We have a considerable number of people receiving medical care in hospital, of which 20 receiving critical care. I can't go into any details of how many people we understand might be missing. I do anticipate that there may be people within that building that are as yet unaccounted for. Now, in terms of the investigation, we're still at a very, very early stage. We're still in that response mode. So specialist investigators from the MPS are working alongside specialist investigators from the London Fire Brigade as well. And in time, we will aim to establish what caused this fire and the events surrounding it.
Do you think the numbers will go up?
I think it is too early to say at this point in time. You'll see the building behind me. You know, it's a considerable number of flats within that premises. A lot of people were recovered from it, but I think it's way too early for me to say. But I do anticipate that, sadly, very sadly, the number of fatalities will rise. No, I don't know at this point in time.
Can you tell us more about the speed of the actual emergency services response? Because clearly it took them a very long time to even attempt to get the fire under control. How quickly were fire engines here?
Can I just say, in terms of the emergency service response, my understanding is that the London Fire Brigade, as they put out in their statement during the night, were here within 6 minutes. Any other questions? So according to colleagues from the London Fire Brigade who have contacted specialist surveyors, at this point in time they consider the building structurally sound. That will be an ongoing process. We have emergency services within the building at this point in time. Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you very much for your assistance and your patience. Please, can I ask you and urge you, if people are concerned, to contact the Casualty Bureau number. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. Commander Stuart Cundy from the Metropolitan Police saying that sadly he believes the number of fatalities will rise. As we know, 6 people confirmed as having died in this fire which broke out at 5 to 1 this morning in the tower block behind me, and making the point that it is going to take quite some time before we know how and why this fire started. And crucially, why it spread so quickly. That is the key issue, in the sense that that is what has caused such absolute devastation, and he would not be drawn, interestingly, on how many people remain unaccounted for. Still such a delicate situation and still work going on, and members of the emergency services at the scene. He said this needs specialist investigation. He did say that the London Fire Brigade were at the scene within 6 minutes of receiving the call. Let's talk to 2 people again from the area, from North Kensington here in West London. Lena and Andrea, hello to both of you. Thanks so much for talking to us. I'm sorry, I don't know who is who, but Lena and Andrea. And you live around here, I believe, is that correct?
Just off Portobello Road, so you can see it from the balcony this morning.
So when did you realise what was going on?
At 4 a.m. Yeah. We started hearing the helicopters and we thought a search was going on, so we went on the balcony and then
and
just
we
saw it
hadn't
all
seen
on.
the news.
Yeah, we hadn't seen anything. We just saw it all
We
on
just
film.
saw the building on fire.
So you could see the flames from your balcony,
Massive.
essentially.
Yeah. It was in its, I think, peak at one of